Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
What would you do if you were prescribed a medication and told that you could experience these adverse effects after taking only one dose? Toxic psychosis, as in hallucinations and paranoia, delirium, disturbances in attention, disorientation, confusion, memory impairment, anxiety, panic attacks, agitation, nervousness, insomnia, vivid nightmares, severe depression, suicidal ideation, and feelings of detachment. Would you still take the medication? These are just some of the psychiatric effects listed by the FDA under the 6th black box warning for fluoroquinolone antibiotics. Can you imagine that an antibiotic can do all of this to you? I couldn't until it happened to me. For those that are watching this show right now that have never been floxed, let me briefly explain what it feels like. It feels like your life has been stolen from you. You feel hopeless because no one understands or believes you, and you are continuously gaslit by the medical community who doesn't recognize your illness, even though it's been documented from the FDA for many years. To further that hopelessness, there is no official treatment or protocol or cure, and you are in constant pain every day, experiencing the absolute worst and most unimaginable adverse effects. The medical community will write off your physical symptoms and say you have a psychological issue, and that is simply not true, but there is no recourse for this situation. Being floxed feels like somebody or something has taken over your body and you have lost all control. And most importantly, it feels like you are living in a perpetual state of grief and suffering. I explain all of this so viewers can understand why so many people that are floxed or people with other chronic illnesses may feel like they are trapped and there is only one option for them, which is Switzerland or taking matters into their own hands. Now, anyone that's ever been on any kind of healing journey, not just being floxed, knows that you will be told you have to address trauma in order to heal. In the floxed community, almost every single person has some degree of medical trauma and or PTSD from the floxing experience itself. So who can you go to and what can you do when nobody believes you? My special guest today is Christine Keown, a registered psychotherapist based in Ontario with an online practice that specializes in medical trauma, medical PTSD, and the emotional impact of living within healthcare systems. Her broader clinical work includes OCD, ADHD, anxiety, grief, burnout, and major life transitions. Christine will share her experience with medical trauma, what it is, what makes someone more likely to get medical trauma and PTSD than someone else, and ways you can help when you are finding yourself in that situation. Lastly, Christine will discuss the services she offers. So with that, I would like to welcome Christine to the show.
Thank you so much, Talia. I am really excited to be here and to discuss everything today. I'm really looking forward to the discussion we get to have today.
Same here. Thank you so much for being here in this extremely important topic for our community and lots of other people in chronic illness, as you know. So I think the best way to kick off the show is if you can explain what medical trauma and PTS is and how it affects us physically.
Yeah, so medical trauma, it's the psychological and physiological, so our mental and bodily response when we've had any involvement with illness, injury, diagnosis, or any involvement with the healthcare system, where our body feels frightened, it feels like it's been through pain, it's been through overwhelm, if something's felt invasive, or something feels outside of our control. The thing with medical trauma and trauma in general is it doesn't have to look catastrophic from the outside for it to be traumatic. So it's how our nervous system is interpreting it. And that in order for it to be traumatic. So it's kind of coding it as, this is dangerous, this isn't feeling safe to me. So it could be a routine procedure to someone else, but to someone experiencing it, it could feel really unsafe. It could be something that, to them, they didn't feel like they had the proper information. They didn't have, which, I mean, based on the same report today, this a lot of different things that are traumatic. A lot of medical gaslighting fits into that. A lot of things where, and then there's not a lot of support in that. So it can feel really difficult when people feel like it's something that other people go through, where it feels very routine to someone else, and then they feel, not only they feel, it is very traumatic to them in that instance. So their body it's going through something very traumatic from that. Medical PTSD, on the other hand, is it's a diagnosis in the DSM. It has very specific criteria that you need to meet from that. So for that, you have to kind of meet the so it's medical PTSD on its own isn't a thing. So it's a PTSD is what you would meet. It would be, you have to have a sudden catastrophic event with that. It's kind of, when we think of medical things, it can be a little bit controversial, because a lot of people, especially when we've been through medical gaslighting and things of that sort, it can be hard, because a lot of people who experience medical gaslighting will feel that they experience PTSD, but they will not have experienced what we call a Class A event, which is the sudden and catastrophic part of a PTSD diagnosis. So they wouldn't actually have a PTSD diagnosis. So they would fit into other parts of, there would be other diagnoses that they could fit under, but they wouldn't actually fit under a PTSD diagnosis. So you would need to fit into the 1122 classification, which is intrusion symptoms, avoidance symptoms, negative changes in thoughts and mood, and arousal and reactivity. So these are things like your nightmares, flashbacks, avoidance of appointments, avoidance of different things in that. It needs to last longer than a month, and it has to be, as I said, it has to be a sudden and catastrophic event. So there's a little bit of controversy with the DSM-5, because a lot of people, as I say, with medical experiences in particular, feel that they have experiences that are very big, but it's not to say if your experience is not, it has nothing to do with how big your experience is. We treat the symptom and not whether it fits into the DSM-5 or gains a label. You can have a severely traumatic event, and it does not have to meet the medical PTSD guidelines to be traumatic or not.
So can you explain who is more likely to get medical trauma or PTSD?
Yeah. So I did, I'm a little bit of a nerd, Talia, and
I am too. It's okay.
I I did a bit of prep for this today, and what I did, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I did. So I wanted to do a little bit of prep and kind of show people, and this is something that I talk about in my practice, and you're not going to be able to see the words on here, but what this is just to show you is you're not alone if you are one of these people in one of these categories here of people who are maybe more predisposed to getting medical PTSD. And I will let you know, I have this attached on my Instagram, which you'll receive later. It's in my bio. I've attached my nerdy PowerPoint that I made. So you can get access to this. But I'm just going to read off some of these here because it's a lot of different people. So I know it can feel overwhelming, but it's also to show you that you're not alone in that. There are a good number of people that are on that list of people that are predisposed. So hopefully that can help people feel that they're not isolated in that experience. So on that list, it's people with previous mental health concerns, anyone who's been through a life-threatening or emergency medical event, people with negative healthcare interactions, those who are neurodivergent, who experience sensory overload or communication barriers with a loss of routine, people who have experienced medical racism, weight stigma, gender-based dismissal, ableism, or discrimination, parents witnessing their child's medical crisis, people experiencing ongoing threat, and those who must return to the same setting that their trauma occurred at, those who continue to have a lack of supportive people who understand their experience, poor social support and isolation, previous trauma or PTSD, those who face additional financial, work, or family stress, those who continue to feel blamed, ashamed, or responsible for what happened, those who have a perceived threat, so a fear of dying, helplessness, they feel trapped or a loss of control, and anyone who experiences an unexpected diagnosis or a sudden deterioration. So as you can see, there's quite a long list of people that might be at a higher risk of experiencing medical trauma or PTSD.
Yeah, when you say experience, what was the thing you just said? Really fast medical decline or something like that.
Yeah, unexpected medical decline or sudden deterioration.
Yeah, that's most of us in the Floxed community. So when people find themselves in this situation and they feel traumatized and don't feel like they have anywhere they can go, what should they do? Like what we do right now is we just deal with it on our own and talk to each other about it, but don't actually seek help. I mean, many people are afraid of it entering their medical records. You know what I mean? So what should we do?
Yes. That's a really important question, right, Talia? I think, I mean, you hit on a really good point though. And that was actually one of the first things I was going to say is building your support systems. So you're not wrong in that first thing that you're doing, because one of the biggest factors of resilience is to build support, build people that understand. And you saw that on that list, right? A lack of supportive people who understand. And when we're facing medical trauma, we often are feeling isolated and feeling like, especially when, your life is changing in a way where oftentimes the things that you're able to do, perhaps your routine, all of the things that you love to do are changing. Those sorts of things, it can be difficult to find people that really understand what your life is like in this moment. So I think even connecting with people within a community people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. So this is a prime example, maybe in the This is Floxed community, or finding people who are experiencing something similar, trying to reach out to people. People sometimes find it very frustrating in the communities that they have if they can't find people. So it might be taking the time to find people who actually do understand what it is that they are experiencing. So that would be my first thing. The second thing is to try to find, I know this is biased coming from a therapist, but trying to connect to some sort of mental health support. But again, I always say, as a therapist, trying to connect to community, I can't do that for you. I can't be your community, right? So they're two entirely separate things. So when you're looking for therapy, it's trying to find someone who can do work in different things like CBT for trauma, prolonged exposure therapy, EMDR work, or specifically works in medical trauma, things of that sort. The other thing I would look for, and these are things that you can start to do on your own, but when we're experiencing medical trauma, it's looking at your body is going to be constantly telling you, I'm still in a state of danger. I'm back in that moment. And it might not be all the time, but it's saying, I don't feel safe. I'm thrust back into this place of, I'm there. I'm there again. I don't feel safe. So trying to remind yourself and trying to give yourself reminders of, okay, how do I find a way to know that I'm safe? For every person experiencing medical trauma, there's going to be different triggers. And one of the things I would say is a big thing that comes up for a lot of people with medical trauma is avoidance will be a huge thing with those trigger points, because it's going to be very hard when triggers are coming up. And I'll give an example here. And a lot of the things, we want to take some time to understand our triggers. So I don't have too much time to go through this here, but I think this is an important thing to kind of get people thinking about, what might my triggers be? What could those be? So a big one that comes up in my office is, the scent of the hospital or the scent of a doctor's office. Something like that could be a particular trigger. So if we're looking at like that sort of thing, it might be like, okay, what are we doing if, we're having that trigger come up? So it's like we've got this trigger. We've got, we know, okay, I have this trigger wherever I am, and it's not only coming up when I go to the doctor's office, but I even have this trigger when I'm out and about. I'm having a great day. I smell the doctor's office, and it totally like makes my day terrible. One of the things that I do with that person is have them, it might be like, get a different scent and you carry it with you. So it might be like in their bag, in their purse, having something where you're like, okay, can you carry with you a hand cream? Can you carry with you a small perfume or something in your purse, depending on what gender we're working with? Something that they say, this is a sensory thing that I'm able to carry with me. When this comes up, first of all, notice, okay, I'm being triggered in this moment. The second thing, okay, orient yourself. Where am I? What day is it? What's around me? What's going on in this moment? Okay, what control do I have right now? Okay, this is what's happening around me. Then, like, taking the moment to like smell the scent that you can smell, rather than like the scent that you feel, that you smell. So it's like reorienting to that moment. And then what choice am I going to make from that moment? So giving yourself that choice to say, okay, now what am I going to do? So it gives yourself a pause. Okay, and now from here, what would I like to do? Okay, I'm giving myself a moment to move from there, and then I'm going to move on. So allowing ourselves to feel those triggers and then move from there allows us to help to orient to what's actually happening in that moment, and then allows us to move in a different direction to say, okay, this was happening then, but here's what's happening now. So if you can kind of identify some of the triggers for yourself, that helps you to move forward in a different direction.
So what would you say for people, because I hear this a lot in our community, is that, because of our, most of our psychological effects are because our GABA A receptors are damaged. So many people feel like that's out of their control, and they have this anxiety that just happens because that receptor is damaged. It's like an anxiety that you can't even imagine, like you can't control. It just, so how do people get, can they be treated is what I'm saying. Even if it's like a receptor that's damaged, can they still be treated and make progress in therapy or whatever they choose to do?
Yeah. And that's a great question, Talia. So when it comes to, and I did some research on this, and I think when it comes to different things, when we have different medical reasons at the forefront, we want to look at different parts, right? We want to look at kind of, there can be we don't necessarily have to solve the, like, whether it's the physical or psychological. And I think so often we feel that, and it can feel so hard when, the medical system is like essentially fighting and saying it's this. But I think there's going to be with everything, there's going to be the secondary consequences of certain things going on with medical treatment that can be worked on. And I think that's where, so when we think of different things as well, if we think of other medical things that are going to impact you mentally, such as a thyroid disorder. When we think of that, it's like there is a primary medical reason going on, but there's also secondary psychological impacts, such as someone might lose a loss of trust in their body. That isn't going to be present for every person with thyroid issues, but for some people, it certainly might be there. So we have to understand what is actually there for you and what is there for, some people and what is there for you. So if we look at the secondary consequences, I am so sorry. If we look at the secondary consequences, what is there for you? And then those are the things that we can work on. So those are kind of, a lot of the times it's going to be things like that hypervigilance, that loss of trust in your body, that loss of trust in healthcare, kind of the grief pieces of things. Those are going to be the pieces of things that a lot of the time we're working on when it comes to that medical trauma piece. And it can be really hard. And a lot of the times there's going to be more so, I can't 100% speak to, but a lot of the times for certain things, when there's medical reasons to it, not a doctor, so I can't 100% speak to this, but there might be more use for a medication for the anxiety end of things. And And that might be where they say we can absolutely work on it in conjunction with that. But there might be some other ways that you can work on both together in that way.
One of the things you just touched upon was grief, and that's something that our community experiences immensely, like the grief of our old life, the blaming ourselves for taking the medication when we trusted our doctors. So, in your experience, how can people get past grieving their old lives? I feel like if you're always grieving your old life, you're never going to be able to move forward. Is that actually possible?
Yeah. And that's a wonderful question. I think one of the nuances I want to hit on there is when you say get past grieving an old life. I think I give that sigh, right? I think like it's hard. It's really hard. I think like grief is an ongoing process. I think if we enter grief thinking we're going to like tick that box and it's going to be done, and we're going to accomplish it, the expectation we're holding with that, it can feel so, it can just feel so awful to feel like, ugh, we're just like sideswiped by it when it's right back. And that can feel almost like worse than the first out of it. It's like, I thought I did this already. I thought I was over that. But the thing with medical illness and medical grief and being able to piece together what that's going to look like, you're essentially you're always coming to terms again and again and again with something. And what I like to think about is it's going to be there constantly. And it's not something we like, but it's like having that passenger there that you're like, okay, you're like that kid that can sit at the back of the 7-seater van and you're like, you're not moving up. You were like always back there. Like, don't you dare try to like take a seat that's any closer. But like when the expectation is like, you are here, I feel like it makes it almost better to know that like, okay, I'm always somewhat like going to have a bit of this. And I think like when I work with grief, I think there's a bit of like one of the biggest things I think I work with, and like from my own experiences, my own experiences with medical trauma, one of the biggest things I think as a society and as people that we tend to do is we focus a lot on like we base our identity a lot on the things that we do. But I think when I work with people now, I think that often can be a really tough thing because, so sorry. What happens with that is instead of like when we do have our world change, when we have things coming up that can be really hard or really tough or things change in a moment, what tends to happen in those moments is all of a sudden it feels like our identity is completely lost. I feel like, you know, it's like we tend to be like, I do these things. I am this person that does this, that does that. I am a runner. I climb mountains. I bike. I do this. I do that. But basing our identity around things we do can be really hard when all of a sudden those things can get taken away really quickly. So some things that I work on with people are being able to try to understand what is it about those things that actually make us who we are. So even if those things do shift, what is it about those things that we do like? So I had a moment in my life where I did have an identity shift and I did have a mountain accident and I wasn't able to do any of those things, but I realized I was still adventurous. I couldn't climb mountains anymore. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't, I shouldn't say I couldn't do anything, but I couldn't do the things I thought I based my life around anymore. And it it got me to think, I felt like, whoa, my identity is very different. And it really shifted a lot about who I was. And it was, I think, this moment of, whoa, okay, we really tend to introduce ourselves with this idea of, this is who I am. I am this person. But trying to figure out, is our identity based on a thing that we do, or is it more on, are you a creative person? Are you someone who, are you adventurous? Do you like spontaneity? How can you bring those things into who you are? And also recognizing that it's okay that our values do shift over time. So those are some of the things that I think it's absolutely possible for these things to shift. It's hard. It's not an easy thing, but it's being able to have some of those conversations with yourself to understand that, what are we basing our identity off of? What are those things that we've always believed about ourselves and believed about our future? How in our mind, how long have we planned out our future? What has that been based upon? And that's really taking some time to understand, a lot of those things about ourselves, a lot of self-reflection.
So, one of the questions I wanted to ask too, which is really important, you don't have to really get into it, but if there's some organization or some place you send people, but for the people that feel like they literally only have one option left, and that is not to be here anymore.
Yeah.
What do you do with those folks? Do you recommend they go somewhere? Do you try to treat them? Because let's be honest, in this chronic illness, it's very hard to make people feel like they have a lot to live for when they're in constant pain. And, it's a very poor quality of life. So how do you keep people motivated or whatever to keep living?
Yeah. And I think it's a really important question. I think one of the things that I think is most important, I think, well, first of all, I think when we're talking about suicide, I think we need to not be afraid to talk about suicide. I think we need to be upfront. If we think that someone is considering suicide, we need to be direct. We need to ask. So in those moments, first of all, we're going to be focused on the here, the now, the next 5 minutes. Sorry, I will let everyone know I have type 1 diabetes. My insulin sensor is going off. I apologize. I'm okay. We want to be focused on the here and now in those moments. The brain is not able to handle anything other than what is going on in that moment. So being able to talk about anything past that is not going to be making sense. So in that, also being direct. A lot of people fear asking if people are going to be considering suicide. They fear if they ask that question, it's going to give someone an idea. That's not true. So it's okay. It's more than okay. In fact, you should be asking if someone is going to be has that thought, has a plan, has anything around them to be considering that. So that is what I would be doing. I ask if there's any plan. We create a plan, a safety plan, depending on what the plan is. We're also going to be planning for, very short term. What are we going to be doing for the next 5 minutes? What are we going to be doing for the next hour? What are we going to be doing, for right after this, and then sending to appropriate spaces and places. So to the emergency person, a lot of the times it might be to, the emergency room, to different places that they might need to be getting care at. So depending on where the person needs to be going, but it all depends on what has been set up in the safety plan. A lot of the time it's going to be calling the emergency contact person that is on the file, and creating. A lot of the times we want to make sure that it's, the best plan for the person involved. So some people don't want to be going to the emergency room, but we want to make sure with the emergency contact person that there is a plan in place, that there's something in place, that the person is going to be safe. And that's always needs to be in order. If there's anything that does come up, so we create in-depth plans before anyone is leaving. We create a follow-up for when the client is going to be returning, and then also create supports for the person who is the emergency contact.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Christine. I really appreciate it. And before I close the show, can you tell viewers how they can reach you?
Yeah. So I can be found on social media. I have an Instagram page. It's Your Health Therapist. And on there, as I mentioned before, I'll have my nerdy PowerPoint slide. So that's available there. And then my website is also on my bio there. So you can find that on there.
Well, thank you so much for being here and helping talk about this, topic that people don't talk about, or people just like to avoid, but we need to discuss it. So thank you very much. I appreciate you being here today.
Not a problem. This is so lovely, and I've loved the chance to be able to talk with you today, Talia.
Thank you. So I want to close out the show by saying thank you to Christine Keown for being here today. If you've learned anything from her, it's that there is hope for healing trauma. It takes a lot of inner work and time, and for some people, it may take longer to heal the psychological trauma than the actual physical damage. One thing to remember is just because you are experiencing psychiatric effects from a fluoroquinolone antibiotic does not mean you have a psychiatric illness. And if you have been unjustly diagnosed as such, I would plead you to try to have that removed from your medical records, or at least note your disagreement, because this is going to make all the difference in your journey going forward. Once you are labeled with a psychiatric illness, every single time you step into a doctor's office, hospital, emergency room, urgent care, they will always focus on your psychological symptoms instead of your physical symptoms, and you are unlikely to get the medical treatment or diagnostic testing you need, furthering this cycle of trauma and not having our needs met. Lastly, I would like to say our community last month lost another beloved Floxy, Ian Patrick Morris. The news of his passing rippled through the Fox community like a tsunami, as he touched so many lives and gave so many people hope. This episode is dedicated to Ian and all his loved ones, and I want to say, wherever you are, Ian, rest in peace. We miss you so much. That's all I have today. I'll see you all next month. Thank you.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.